Welcome to Trends with Benefits, a podcast by Van Eck with a forward-looking perspective. We explore new ways of thinking about the markets, investing, work, and life. Here's your host, Ed Lopez.
Welcome to another episode of Trends with Benefits. Speaking with me today is Justin Castelli, founder and financial advisor at RLS Wealth Management. He's also host of All About Your Benjamins, the blog and podcast, and host of the Advisor of Tomorrow podcast. Justin, thanks for joining me today. It's going to be a great conversation. I know it.
Ed, I've been looking forward to this all week. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I got to tell you a quick little story, kind of a divergence of what we're going to talk about. But, last time we met, you complimented my hair and well, thank you very much. But after this weekend, I think I almost had to shave off part of it in order to stitch something up. I was golfing. And driving a golf cart, looking off the passenger side for a ball. And I quickly made a turn back into the cart, hit my head on the little monitor they have in the golf cart that kind of gives you the range. And man, it hurt. I mean, it hurt a lot. And I sat there for, 5 seconds, just kind of holding my head. Luckily, I didn't pass out. And then blood started coming down. It's like, oh boy. All right. So then, we drank the rest of the beers, took the ice, put it on the head. Luckily, I think it was really just a scrape. But, yesterday, so that was over the weekend. I think, a day later, I do that. I call a doctor. I have a video call with a doctor, telemedicine. He goes, well, because you can upload a picture of your ailment if you have one. And he goes, well, I probably would have had you do stitches. I'm thinking, well, I'm glad I didn't call you. So we're masking this. I'm going to try not to lean into the camera so you can see the top of my head. But
we'll let it pass. It was funny during COVID time, like now it's kind of opening back up, but I was cutting my own hair during quarantine time and I could cut the sides and the top to look real good, but the back was real bad. So I just joked and said that was my Zoom hair. If I was ever going to leave the house, I'd have a hat on, but my clients would never see the bad part of my hair because it's easy to cut your sides and top. The back is the tricky part. So
yeah, totally.
I feel your pain just in a different way.
You can totally get away with that on Zoom. Were you doing video calls with clients even before COVID? Or is that something that's coming to be a bigger part of your practice going forward?
I was Zooming before it was cool. So Zoom was a part of my tech stack from the very beginning. I had clients kind of all over the country, but then early on in working with young professionals, I started having Zoom meetings in the evenings with clients that are in my town. So I live in Fishers, Indiana, which is just outside of Indianapolis, not a huge town, but it's more convenient for us to meet at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night after the kids would go to bed and hop on a Zoom meeting, even though they were, 5 minutes away from me down the street. So I've been using it. I'm honestly ready to get back to being in person. I know that there's a lot of talk about this is really going to change our profession. More people are going to be virtual. And that's true, but being in person still would be my preference. It's nice to at least be able to see each other, share screens. It works, but I'd rather be in person than always operating off of Zoom. It's interesting. I've noticed that my usual 90-minute review meetings are getting done in about an hour on Zoom. And we're still doing the usual small talk and kind of socializing, but we get to business a lot faster. So from an efficiency standpoint, I think Zoom makes all of our meetings a little bit better, but I'd rather go the full hour and a half. I don't know what we're missing. Maybe it's more pictures of the kids and things of that sort. But it's been something I've done for a while, but I'm ready to get back to in person.
Yeah, there's something nice about in person. I can understand that. It's probably also one reason why I like to print things out and read them, but
I've got our notes printed out as well. I still like to have the physical paper when I'm reading things.
Well, tell me a little bit about your business. What does RLS stand for?
So it's not the easiest thing to say. I stumble saying it, and it stands for Roman, Leo, and Silas. So those are my three boys. When I launched my firm 5 years ago, the easy part was figuring out, okay, I'm going to start my own company. Here's the platforms I'm going to use. I'm going to custody here. The name was the hardest thing. I knew I didn't want Castelli Wealth Management. Not that that's a bad thing, but I just knew I didn't want that to be the name. And I didn't want your standard, usual advisory firm name that we see all over the place. I ultimately just decided, hey, I need to get the ball moving. I'm going to name, it was initially RL Wealth Management because it was just Roman and Leo. And then Silas came along and had to do a rebrand, which was exciting, and added the S to the letter. So it stands for my boys' names.
Excellent. And then and the type of client base that you serve, do you have a particular niche?
So I don't have a niche yet. Early in my career, I was almost Mr. Anti-niche. So I'm a member of the XY Planning Network, which Michael Kitces and Alan Moore are very much about having a niche or a niche, depending where you are in the country and how you want to say it. And I wanted to prove that you could build a successful business not having one. So when I launched, basically, I would say my niche were people that I enjoyed being around. When I launched, I wanted to work with young professionals. So I had a young professional business model. Retirees are where I spent most of my career up until that point. So I had your traditional AUM model, and I just wanted to work with people that I liked. And that was kind of the goal for the first 4.5 years. And I just did a refresh, rebrand of RLS. The website's been redone. I won't necessarily say it's a niche in the technical sense. It's not doctors, it's not attorneys, but the people I want to work with, the niche that I want to develop, it's more of a mindset. So it's more about people. I want to work with people that don't want to live just a normal traditional life. You know, maybe they're entrepreneurs and they want to start a business. Maybe they want to take 2 years off and go take a sabbatical and travel the world with their family, or they have an impact they want to leave. I want to do financial planning that is not traditional. We have to be creative with what we do, think outside the box. Because that's kind of how I have become, how I've grown as an individual and as an advisor. And that's what excites me. So the days of working with, 30-year career people, that's not who I want us to help. I want to help people that are thought leaders. As much as I hate that term, they're trailblazers. They're going after life and taking control of their life. And that requires a certain type of planning. And that's the type of planning that we're focusing on now.
And that makes it challenging for you too, I would imagine, trying to find the right plan that to suit them and makes it interesting.
That makes it fun. There's certain things that are always going to be very similar, but how do you help somebody take a year off? How do you plan ahead of time? Where do you take that from? Or, I look at my story. When I started my firm, I took a distribution from my Roth IRA to start my firm. CFP book's going to tell you never touch your retirement assets. If you can't afford to do it, don't do it. But that was the best investment if I look at ROI, better than anything the market returned over that time period, but it was the best investment for my life. It gave me the opportunity to own my business, create my story, have the flexibility that I want. So it was the best thing. And I'm willing to, as an advisor, walk my clients through those trade-offs, those opportunity costs, to ultimately determine, okay, this is not what a traditional financial planning textbook is going to say we're going to do. Here's the reasons why, here's how it's going to help you, and we're going to move forward with this, but we've talked about the good and the bad of it.
And so you started your practice, what you said, 5 years ago, 2015 or so?
Yep. July 5th. Well, actually, July 3rd is when I got the approval email. July 5th was my first meeting with clients. I'll never forget it.
That's awesome. That was quick. So then you were practicing before that though. So you've been practicing since 2004, I think.
Right. Yeah. Right out of college. Not too different than a lot of your other guests. I feel like for most of us who have been in the business a long time, we've stumbled our way to find ultimately where we're supposed to be. So for any young advisor or somebody thinking about coming into the profession that might be listening, where you start was probably not going to be where you end up. And that's okay. So I started at an insurance-based firm, and then I moved to a bank. And then I spent a good chunk of my career at a 403B company. I worked at an independent firm in town for a couple of years before launching my own firm. And each step was very valuable in teaching me, the type of practice I wanted to have, the type of advisor I wanted to be, the way I wanted to help people, who I wanted to help. So each step had a very valuable influence on where I am today. And I wouldn't go back and change any of it. I mean, I wish I would have started my firm earlier, but all of those things had to happen for me to get where I am today. So it's all worth it.
And when you started, did you start out with a subscription model to begin with, or is that something new, something that's developed over time?
I had that from the start. The idea kind of had begun at that previous firm. We were exploring working with dentists, and I had come up with tiers of relationships for depending on where the dentist was in their career. And there are different price points. Different services were provided. And obviously the earlier in the career, the less they paid, the less they got. And the further along they went, the more they got, the more they paid. And that was kind of the genesis that kind of started this idea of the subscription model. And the funny thing is, I came up with this idea, and then I found the XY Planning Network, which is very much a proponent of the subscription model. So I had the idea, and then I saw that there's a network with a bunch of advisors doing this that gave me the confidence really to roll it out. And early on, that was the fastest growing part of my business. I never had to quote unquote sell it. I was able to tell young professionals who were looking for help, hey, Like, I don't care how much you make. I don't care how much you have in assets. I can help you. And oh, by the way, I'm at the same stage of life as you are. I know what you need. And I've been working with people who are where you want to go. So I've got the experience of where you want to go. I've where you're at today, and what you need is my expertise. And it was very easy to get young professionals in there. I'm actually working on building a online course to teach financial advisors how to build out a subscription model, because I think that every firm should have a subscription model option in their ADV. Doesn't have to be something that they offer to everybody, but it should be there if they want to be around for the next 30 years. It's well documented, the wealth transfer that's coming down the pike, $68 trillion from the boomers to the millennials. And if you're working with millennials today, they're going to be the ones inheriting that wealth. And if you're taking the time to help them today, when most advisors won't, and you do a good job, I don't think they're going to leave you. So I think that having the subscription model puts you in play for the long game from an inheritance standpoint, or your existing clients that might be the boomers have grandchildren and children that could fit into the subscription model, and you've been working with them all along and they already know you. So I'm trying to get more advisors to consider it. It doesn't have to be the only way you charge, but I think it should be an option.
Are you seeing other types of services come into the financial planning business?
You're seeing a little bit of merger of some of kind of like some life coaching as well. Another thing we're seeing is a lot of change in the way that planning is being administered. So when I started, very few advisors were really doing financial planning. We said we had a document, but it was a sales tool. Like, I remember at the 403B company, my quote unquote financial plan, it had Monte Carlo in it. So it was running projections, but it also had a section that showed a variable annuity was right for every single plan. It filled a hole for every single plan, no matter who you were. It was a sales tool. But now you're seeing people really go in on doing planning, realizing that for a lot of advisors, the time spent to really drive a lot of value on the investment side, it's not there. We don't have the expertise to it. And really, if you have a diversified portfolio, you keep your costs low, you have good behaviors, the market will probably do what you need it to do if you control the variables that we can really control. So rather than try to pick the next stock or move things around, trying to get the trends, we can help our clients have better behaviors, manage their money better, have better spending habits, not make dumb decisions that will blow things up, and the market will kind of take care of itself. So the trend I'm most excited about when it comes to planning is kind of taking it beyond the numbers and going into life planning. There's a gentleman by the name of George Kinder, who's the godfather of life planning. He has a designation. He's an awesome guy. I had him on All About Your Benjamins. He came and talked about the life planning process, but life planning process is really about aligning values with dollars. And that's what as I did the rebrand for my company and the refocus, purpose is the big word. If you go to my website, you see purpose a lot. I want to help my clients find their purpose and then make sure that their financials are leading them to that purpose. Because what we often see is we have these goals: retirement, college, buying a house, these American dream goals that fit into most people's lives, but that may not be the most important thing. There's other goals that people have. And if there's something that a client values more than one of those, I would rather help them live the life that's going to bring them the greatest happiness and bring them the most value than get them on track for retirement and make them miss out on things that would make them happy. Because if you're in this business long enough, you are reminded that life isn't fair. And you have clients that pass away 3 days after coming in and filing their retirement paperwork with you to retire as a teacher. And you realize he did all that perfect preparation, everything he was supposed to do, and he never really got to enjoy the fruit of his labor. Now, he lived a good life along the way. And I say this is something I experienced. I had a client come in on Wednesday. Saturday, he was hit while riding his bike and he passed away. Wednesday, we filled out his retirement paper for the Indiana teacher retirement plan. I want to make sure that my clients are doing all of the proper things going forward to reach those retirement goals and those big goals, but that they're enjoying themselves along the way. We can have balance in what we're doing with planning. And that's kind of what the life planning process is bringing in. And I think that if we take a step back and look at what is most meaningful from a stereotypical standpoint for millennials and the future generations, and I'm barely a millennial, we value balance. There are many of us who would be willing to make less money to never miss one of our kids' games. We're willing to not buy things to have more experiences. So the lives that we're trying to create, I think, require different planning, require an advisor to be willing to listen and not put the advisor's visions into the client's head, but help them create a plan that's going to lead them down the path of the life they want to live. And that's what the life planning is. So you're seeing more and more people go get the designation and talk about it. I think that's the next wave of planning. It's going to go way beyond retirement, way beyond asset allocation. It's going to be helping clients build the lives that they want.
Something I've been hearing more about recently, particularly as I've been doing these podcasts, is this concept of community. What does community mean to you, and how is it part of your practice?
So community it's a buzzword right now, but it's a buzzword for a reason, because we're finding, especially in COVID times, we are creatures that want to be around people. We want to be surrounded by people who have similar thoughts and interests, and we want to be around people that we like. And the way that community is finding its way into my practice, there's actually two ways. I'm currently in the process of building out the infrastructure of a community that's an online community for my clients. And I think this could be, if I can figure it out and make it work, I think it'll be a real cool addition to the work that we do for our clients. So we're going to help you live your life the way you want to live it, align your finances to allow you to do that. But then we're going to enrich your life beyond that. So this online community, I'm using a platform called Circle that will be organized for all RLS clients to be able to have access to it, but it's going to have nothing to do with finance. So inside this format, as I'm building it out, it's got sections to talk about entrepreneurship, health and wellness, productivity, parenting. I want to give these clients who have similar interests a place to get together and just connect. And early on, that's going to require me to bring content to that. But if I do a good job and the community begins to take over itself and kind of run itself. So now we've helped you get your finances in order, but we've also helped you find ways to make your life more meaningful by the content we bring in, the people we bring in, or the connections you make inside this community. And the bigger vision that I have is that this community becomes so strong that people start talking about it. I have all these great friends in this RLS community, and the only way to become a community member and have access to the great events that we're doing is you have to be a client of ours. So now it becomes another thing that differentiates our firm and also may attract people that want to work with us to have access to that community. And I've learned all of this by my friend Taylor Schulte, who's a former guest on Trends of Benefits. He and I started the AGC, which is an online community for advisors. And we're actually just barely over 1 year into the community, but we saw an opportunity to give advisors a place to come talk together, trade best practices. A lot of advisors out there view each other as competitors, but more advisors out there actually don't. We see each other as people that we can collaborate with, we can learn from. And ultimately, if my advisor friends are growing and doing better, then that's good for me as an advisor because the profession's looking better. So we've had a lot of success there. It's been a lot of fun. And I want to take those principles and then enrich the relationships I have with my planning clients.
Tell me a little bit more about the AGC. What are there different tracks for advisors to follow? Are you guys producing content or hosting presentations?
So again, we're 1 year in. September 1st of 2019 was the first day of open enrollment. And our goal was to get 50 advisors. We would start in October. And within 72 hours, we had our 50 advisors signed up, which automatically showed us that this is something that people want. And we didn't even know. Like, this was an idea that he and I started talking about in August. So we went from 0 to 100 real quick. That's a Drake reference for any of the hip hop fans out there. But so in the community, there's many components. So there's not necessarily a track. We're hosting that on a platform called Mighty Networks. Think of like a bigger Facebook, but private. We try to do a good job of monitoring the comments that go on, and if appropriate, setting up some Zoom breakout sessions for people to kind of talk rather than type to answer questions. Every Tuesday, 1:00, we have a Zoom webinar. And the original goal was to have one speaker a month. We have a new speaker every week, basically. From time to time, we'll have an open session. Sometimes Taylor will lead a session. I may lead a session. A community member may lead a session. But we're bringing in people both from finance and from outside of finance to help us in our goals of growth. And when I say goals of growth, kind of the underlying theme and a common thread for the community is we want to grow as advisors. We want to grow our business. We want to become better advisors. But the other important part of the growth component is from a personal standpoint. We don't want to grow our business at the sacrifice of our families or our friends. So how do we kind of do both? So we've had people come in and talk about, wellness. We have somebody come in and talk about mental health. We've had, Carl Richards in, we've had Josh Brown in, David Perel, who's a fabulous writer, come in and talk about communicating. it's fun to have those people we look up to in the profession, like Josh and Carl. But then it's real cool to have people who have nothing to do with finance come in and bring a fresh perspective. Like we had Jack Butcher, who is running a company called Visualize Value. It's all about visualization, and talk about how incorporating visualizations will help us communicate with our clients. Like not very many advisors are thinking that way. So it's a lot of fun. It has exceeded my wildest expectations. And we're really trying to figure out, okay, in year 2, how do we make it even better?
Does that kind of work extend to consulting with advisors too, kind of on a more one-to-one basis?
Yeah, in my efforts to work with other advisors is I'm very careful about the AGC is not a filter to that work. If an AGC member wanted to work with me, that's awesome. But the AGC exists for the community. It's not to pitch services that Taylor and I may own time come up with to those members. My efforts to work with other advisors just comes from, I really love talking about branding and marketing and content strategy. If you look at my social media, like I'm trying it all. I want to see it make my business grow, but I also want to learn what works so I can help other people. And I really enjoy seeing other advisors succeed. So the desire to work with other advisors and help them establish their brand and create a content strategy and figure out what type of content should they create, where should they put it, what's the story, that's all behind me wanting to see that advisor succeed and grow a business of success. And I am a big believer in content marketing, which is why that's where the focus is right now.
What does brand mean for an advisor? Does that go back to the idea of a niche or a niche?
It could. So having the niche will really help you clarify your brand. But to me, I take it back as when I first started thinking of branding, I'm a huge Nike guy. Like growing up, Nike was all I ever wore. Jordan was my favorite player. And when I thought of branding, I thought of like swoosh and just do it. And like, that's a component of branding. But for an advisor, and we talk about personal branding, your brand is just your reputation. I think we all have a reputation. Taking your reputation, what you're known for, what your beliefs are, who you are, and packaging that up in a story and telling that story over and over and over, that becomes your brand. So for me, my belief is you don't set out and say, all right, Ed, here's your brand. You are a podcast host with great hair. Like that's you don't set out with that being it. So we joke about your hair only because I had multiple people talk about how good your hair is. But that's you didn't set out to do that. You just have that hair. But you're different than a lot of advisors or different people in your space that for whatever reason that stands out. And that's just you. And you keep on being you. And ultimately that becomes a part of your brand. And some people run with that and they own that, or, that's just a part of who you are. So I think building your brand is just figuring out who you are. And if we're talking about advisors, who are you as an advisor? What are your beliefs? What do you stand for? Telling that story, showing your expertise and educating the public and your clients, and then bringing in a little bit of personality. And when you put all those things together, that creates the brand that you become known for. And ultimately the value of that brand is some people will like that brand and some people won't. And that will attract ideal clients for you, people who are going to want to work with you because of your expertise. And because even before they meet you in person, they already like you. And then you're going to deflect the people that would be a bad fit because they don't like one thing about you, whatever it might be. When I started my firm, I had no intention of this evolving this way. Like I have no history of doing this before starting my firm. Like I worked at corporate companies. I couldn't do any of this stuff, but I told myself, I'm done wearing suits. I have tattoos. I'm not going to hide them. I'm going to wear short sleeve shirts and t-shirts in the summer. It's 90 degrees today. And if a client is bothered by that, or a prospective client is bothered by that, then there's probably something else that is going to be problematic. We're not going to be a good fit. But if they don't have any issues with that, they see the value in the work that I do, I'm just going to be me. So you come in my office, I have a Gary V style wall that has a bunch of stuff that's just me. Like it's got hip hop albums on it. It's got pictures of my boys. It's got sports stuff on it. And it's just basically, if you look at that wall, you get a feeling of who I am. And I want to try to convey that in the content that I put out there as well, which is why I love doing video, because you see a lot of me, you hear a lot of me. You get those background pictures of Nipsey Hussle on the wall and my boys' paintings on the wall. Like you get a feel of who I am, which really speeds up the process of building a relationship.
Let's go back, say maybe 5 years in the industry. I forget when this actually really started becoming a thing, but Robo advisors, has that been an impact in your business at all? Or how has that been perhaps integrated into your practice?
To my knowledge, it has not negatively impacted me. Now, I don't know who came to my website, decided not to, and went to Betterment or Wealthfront or whatever it might be, but I don't know. I've not had a client leave to go to a robo advisor. I think robo advisors are a good thing for our profession. There are only so many advisors. There's more people than we can all serve that need help. There are some people who don't need the investment management, don't want the ongoing. So that if it's a need, I think that service is there. Do I think a robo advisor replaces a physical person when it comes to financial planning? Obviously, I'm biased because my livelihood is staked in this, but I don't think so. And again, it goes back to like the concept of life planning. A robo advisor and an 800 number cannot help somebody map out the life that they want, because part of it is clients don't necessarily know what they want. And it's on me, or it's on the advisor to help figure that out. You've got to have those soft skills to pull that out of people. So while maybe more and more time goes on, I decide, hey, I don't want to do the investment management anymore, and I'll partner up with a robo and let them run it for me. I can see that integrating in my practice. I could see that be a great integration for somebody who just wants to do planning, has no desire to want to do the investments. So leverage one of those platforms, do the planning. I won't call it a robo, but I've actually created a robo-like relationship for the firm on the rebrand. So I had the subscription model, the AUM model, still would get some clients that, kids of clients that would not be a good fit for the subscription model. It didn't make sense. And they had some investments they wanted to have managed. So basically I just rolled out a new one. We're calling it Wealth Genesis. We'll manage the investments, the same portfolio as our subscription clients. It's the same management fee as the subscription clients pay for the investment management. But you don't get a plan. You don't get access. You get the very basic annual review that we're required to do by compliance. But where I hope this will be different from some other robo advisors out there is we're actually creating content just for those clients. So we're going to do a video series or a library of videos of just basic fundamentals of finance, 5-minute videos, what's compound interest, what's net worth, how do you do a budget, just to give them some resources. So they're having their investments managed by us and we're giving them some education. And then we're going to do a monthly newsletter just for them, giving them some, curation of content from other places, read these things, continue to grow. But we'll also do a video where we'll answer their questions. So they can email in questions for the month, and then we'll answer those questions. Now, very, very beginning stages. We have like 2 clients in it right now. It's honestly not something that I plan to market real hard. It's on the website. I kind of look at it as this is here for a situation that makes sense. We've got it built in, but it's not something I really have a desire to go all in on.
Just kind of curious on the investment side, do you tend to put clients in what type of products? ETFs, mutual funds? Does it vary?
ETFs and mutual funds. I have a handful of clients that came to us with individual securities, and I don't pick stocks. We don't add individual securities to it, but we continue to monitor those. And if they're good stocks, I don't force them to sell it. So, we use a lot of model portfolios as the foundation. Most of our clients are all in the same, not in the same model, but like the different tiers. So if you're in the growth model, most clients in the growth model hold the same funds. But if there's a good fund that came over, or if a client really wants to hold a stock, we'll make some minor tweaks to personalize it a little bit, but it's mostly ETFs and mutual funds. And I'm slowly wanting to downsize the mutual fund component and move more to the ETF side. Just right now, to me right now is not the greatest time to be making portfolio changes, even though like when you look at the asset allocation and where you're going from and where you're going to are comparable funds. I just, from a behavioral standpoint, which is so much of what we have to take into consideration as advisors, they're benchmarking. So you're moving from the mutual fund that has a good long-term performance because it's been a bull market for the last however long. And now you're starting with this new ETF in the middle of up and down markets. Behaviorally, it may not be the right thing to do. And yes, I'll save some fees moving to an ETF, but it's not life-changing to them. So I'm already in low-cost mutual funds. It just would save us a little bit more. So waiting for a better time to make that transition.
Perhaps for another bigger pullback or just more incremental,
honestly,
perhaps.
Honestly, I would love a more calm time.
Yeah.
And obviously, we don't know when it's going to be calm, but we've got COVID and going back to schools and what's that all going to look like? We've got an election year. Like I stand by the portfolios I have my clients in today. Like I don't necessarily have to change them, but I've found some ETFs I could use to replicate what I'm doing, lower the fees, make them a little bit more tax efficient. So I want to get there, but we know that if you think about lump sum investing, we know the numbers tell us lump sum all day long, but clients don't always stomach that very well. So you have to kind of balance where we need to get to from a number standpoint with what's going to sit right with the client so they stay with the plan. It's great to have this great idea that on paper is the right answer, but if a client can't stay with it, then it's blown up and it doesn't matter anyway.
So let me ask you about podcasting. I know that's part of your content arsenal as well. How is that going for you?
It's ebb and flow. So All About Your Benjamins has been on a little bit of a lull, but that's because I've been focusing on the Advisor of Tomorrow. So the Advisor of Tomorrow podcast right now, I'm doing every other Friday, and I'm actually doing it live. So Fridays, 1:00 Eastern, I hop on, we go into Zoom, I push it out to YouTube with the goal that hopefully it becomes ingrained in people's schedules that they actually tune in and they can ask us questions during the podcast. So how cool would it be that as we're talking right now, we could answer somebody's question live on the podcast? And then I'll put it out on Monday so you can listen to it on the podcast format. I would tell anybody thinking of doing a podcast that they should definitely do it. There's a lot of SEO and content reasons, but it's just another way for you to show your expertise, communicate, but then the networking that comes out of it. The people that I now know because they were podcast guests is mind-blowing. So the whole reason I started, I fell in love with Patrick O'Shaughnessy's Invest Like the Best podcast. Like that was the first podcast that really pulled me in. And I thought that would be fun. That would give people that I don't know a reason to talk to me. I'm going to start a podcast. And that was the reason I started it.
All right. So since this is a podcast about trends, what is one long-term trend you see playing out over the next several years?
I'm going to bring it back to the profession. And I think the trend that's going to continue to get stronger is one that we talked about. I think the trend for the advisor is going to be bringing more value to the relationship with your clients beyond the numbers. And that can take the form of the life planning or other areas. I once had a vision of trying to incorporate my love of wellness and health into the relationship. And I even thought about buying one of those in-body machines. I don't know if you've seen those before, but you stand on them and they use electrolysis or something, and it prints out a report that tells you your weight, your body mass, how much muscle you have in one arm versus the other, all this data. And I thought, I have a client that she has her own direct healthcare. And I thought, what if I did that as a part of every annual review? Stand on the InBody, we send it off to her. She writes up a report year over year and gives you some recommendations. I never see it. It goes directly to you. But part of your financial plan was a health assessment as well. And I didn't know how people would really feel about that because I've learned over time, tinkering with diet and nutrition and weightlifting, that like when you start to get into that type of stuff, I feel like it's just as controversial and personal as like politics and religion. I decided to pull out of that and just like let people know that I'm interested in it and talk about it and maybe send them some resources, but not make it a part of the process. So the long story short is I think adding more value to what it is that we do beyond just the numbers will solidify what it is that we do for our clients. And I think we transition more to life coaching as opposed to just financial planning.
I was thinking it's almost, there's kind of a parallel between financial fitness and physical fitness in terms of professionals that can help you in getting through it. But I can definitely see your point where there's some complications just on the health side of it too, or on both sides. It makes it a little bit more complicated.
Well, part of how I wanted to justify it is what's one of the biggest costs you have to worry about in retirement? Healthcare.
Health, yeah.
So if we are focusing on our health as we're focusing on building our wealth, there's no guarantees, but we're doing everything in our power, just like we do with our planning, to put ourselves in the best position to be in retirement as healthy as possible, to be able to enjoy it and have lower costs. So like I had thought behind it rather than just I enjoy it as well, but it's like, how do you merge those two together? And I'm sure somebody's going to figure it out. Just not me.
And just like anything, I think you just got to get started. Start saving a little bit, or start working out, start walking. Right. If that's all you can do, just go do something.
Well, I don't know if you read James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. I feel like everybody has, but it's just basically like 1% better every day, which it's impossible to continue to be 1% better every day. But if you just take that small incremental increases from time to time, you're going to get better. So to your point, if you're not active, start walking every day and then start doing a little bit of weightlifting. And then you just slowly start to build it up. And that's where you see it's the same thing. Start saving 5% to your 401k, and then next year bump it up to 6, and then bump it up to 7, and you just slowly do it. And before long, you're seeing these big changes. The incremental increase is very little.
All right. So for the last segment, it's called Trend or Fad. I'm going to mention a few different concepts. Let me know if you think it's a trend or a fad.
Okay.
Artificial intelligence, trend or fad?
Trend.
Business suit and ties, trend or fad?
Fad.
Connected home fitness, trend or fad?
Trend.
Bitcoin, trend or fad?
Trend.
And celebrity podcasts, trend or fad?
I wish they're a fad. Only because they're already famous. Like, let us little guys have a little bit of chance of commanding the airwaves. Like, I look at the celebrities that are already famous and they launch their podcast and it's automatically up and they're good, but it's just like, man, like, can we just have an opportunity to shine? So they'll continue to be trends, but I wish they were fads.
Well, this has been great. Thank you very much for your time, Justin.
Ed, thank you. I had a blast.
What's the best way for people to follow you and find you?
I'd say I direct them out to Twitter. My handle on Twitter is @Justin Castelli. So that's JUS10 Castelli, CASTELLI, or justincastelli.io.
Fantastic. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Trends with Benefits.